Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to switch gears now and go to Rome, Georgia, where we are bringing you the sentencing hearing for 23-year-old Brandon Risner. This is a former aspiring actor who is facing life in prison after pleading guilty last month to brutally stabbing his best friend, Aaron Davis, after a night out drinking. His motive? Well, that remains a mystery. Now, before we take you into court for the sentencing hearing, here is Court TV's own Kelly Craft with a closer look at this case.
23-year-old Brandon Risner admits to stabbing one of his closest friends to death. On June 20th, Risner pleaded guilty to murdering 21-year-old Aaron Davis.
How do you plead to these charges? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Do you understand the murder charges carry a potential sentence of life without parole?
Yes.
Davis and Risner met while growing up in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. They went to the same high school and church. They bonded over their mutual interests of film and acting. Here is a clip from 2019 of a short movie they made together, posted on YouTube.
You know, Brandon, this is how I always wanted it to be. Man versus man. Brother against brother.
On November 11th, 2022, Davis spent the night with Risner at Risner's parents' home in Rome, Georgia. Davis was to go to Alabama the next day to visit his girlfriend, but Davis never showed. The Davis family contacted the police. Investigators found his car abandoned at a park, signs of foul play at the Risner home, and soon discovered Davis's body buried in a wooden area. He had been stabbed at least 20 times.
To cover up his crimes, the defendant attempted to dismember the body, and in doing so removed a portion of the small intestines, which was never recovered. He then went to Walmart and bought cleaning supplies and attempted to clean Aaron's blood off of the mattress, carpet, and rug, as well as Aaron's blood spatter off of the ceiling of an upstairs bedroom.
Risner was arrested and charged with malice murder and concealing the death of another on the same day Davis's body was found. Davis's father spoke to 11 Alive News and told them Risner was like a son to their family.
He's been as much of a son to us as anyone else, so it's really like losing two kids at this point. It just felt like betrayal.
Let's go now in for that sentencing hearing. We are picking it up with the victim impact statements. Up first is the girlfriend of the victim.
Aaron Davis was and is the love of my life. I will never be the same for having known him. He loved me and I loved him. I could tell you 100 love stories and it would not do justice to how wonderful he was. No one has ever understood me quite like he did. To him, I was seen for my soul. His death shattered me. I was a fragment of who I am. When I received the news that Aaron was dead after running all through Rome in the freezing cold looking for my love, I collapsed outside of a gas station in front of an ice machine, and I could not stop screaming. That first night, I slept in my mom's bed. I couldn't sleep without waking myself up crying. I couldn't be alone in the dark anymore because I would see Brandon's face lurking around dark corners. It was a blow when we found out Aaron's personal items were missing. We never got Aaron's phone back. I've had nightmares about it since that day. Losing someone's phone feels like losing another little piece of them. Aaron and I had special bracelets with the planets on them we got for our 3-month anniversary. He kept his bracelet in his car because he wanted to be able to wear it every time we were together. Aaron was infamous for his bright shirts and sense of style, and some of his most iconic ones were packed for the weekend we had just planned that day. These items with so much sentimental value are lost to us. I had hinged so much of my healing on being able to see Aaron's body one more time, and another blow came when we were denied that opportunity for our own good. The damage to his body was too much. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to hold his hand or touch his face one more time or touch his hair or hug him. I got to kiss a cold casket and hope that he knew how dearly I loved him. We had so many plans for our future and the life we were building together. Thanksgivings and Christmases, family traditions. We wanted to go to the beach together. It was his favorite place. He was one of the most wonderful people to be around. We wanted to have kids and raise them together. He especially wanted a daughter. He loved the idea of all the little experiences that would come with being a girl dad. We talked about being in the delivery room and him getting to do skin-to-skin contact and having that bonding moment. We wanted a wedding where both of our families could be together to celebrate, to be there for our first dance. We wanted to be married for time and eternity. But because of a man he called his best friend, who surely would have been one of his groomsmen, Aaron and I will never have these opportunities. It has been torture to live with this new reality. I met Aaron a little over 2 years ago now, and I am still as in love with him as I was the first time I told him I loved him. I don't know that I'll ever be able to move on, to live with the guilt being the only one living our shared dreams. But I have been blessed beyond measure to have had the opportunity to experience true love in my lifetime.
How did you meet him?
It was at a church camp out. It was in Alabama. They were playing a get to know you game, and he stood up and he said his name, and I said, "That's it. That's the one. I'm gonna remember his name." We actually had our first kiss there under shooting stars.
Okay, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I'm gonna read a little piece of the love letter he sent me, if that's okay.
Sure.
And this is Aaron writing this to me. Even if the flap of a butterfly's wing causes one of us to die in an accident, or 1,000 monsters manage to bring me down, we'll always have back then, and I would rather spend the rest of my life missing you than never having known you. I think you're the most talented, funny, smartest, and more beautiful girl I know. You light up the world with every smile, and you genuinely glow, changing from moonlight to sunlight. You constantly surprise me with just how wonderful a person can be, and I didn't know I could love someone as much as I love you.
Nice.
We'll call Randy Davis.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
I'm Randy Davis. I'm Aaron's father. It's okay if I go ahead and read what I've written?
It is.
So November 12th, 2022, our 20-month ongoing nightmare began. We've always been a close and loving family with deep commitment to each other, faith, and the community. On November 12th, 2022, I received a call from the Rome Police Department that my car that my son Aaron had been using was found in a ravine here in Rome, Georgia. As far as we knew, Aaron should have been at his girlfriend's house in Alabama the day before, so this was certainly unexpected. Since Aaron was staying in Rome the night of November 10th at the home of Brandon Risner, I called Brandon immediately to let him know and ask him if he knew why the car would be there. Brandon acted concerned and mentioned that Aaron had stayed an extra day in Rome, and that he noticed that he had left sometime during the night before. With a few additional phone calls, Brandon added speculation as to what might have happened or where he may have been going, such as going home to receive the Nintendo Switch game system that was mentioned previously. He also mentioned to me that Aaron may have been suicidal and tried to kill himself. Brandon even came down to the site where the car was found and attempted to search for Aaron, all the while knowing what he had really done, and in the middle of attempting to hide the evidence in his own home. So although life has changed in so many ways since that day, let me focus on three main changes that I can think of. The first is the loss of the potential of my son and all the potential that he had. Aaron had worked so hard to be where he was at that day. He was 21. He had, while he was in high school, his final 2 years, he had been taking college classes so that he could get ahead, then he committed to serve a 2-year mission for our church, which was unfortunately cut short because of COVID. But he did complete his college education. Just that summer of 2022, he had finished his last internship, which was a law internship with my nephew up in North Carolina. And he had just come home and was so excited. He just felt like he had just kind of hit that check mark where he was ready to launch off into life. He decided that he wasn't convinced yet that law school was for him, and so that he thought he would be a great teacher. So the morning before driving to Rome, he had aced the GACE exam required for applying for a teaching certificate program. He would have been an amazing teacher and could have impacted many lives that way. His long-range goal was to become a college professor if he ultimately decided that law school was not for him. It's such a tragedy to me that so much potential was wasted due to the defendant's actions. Aaron was in love, as we've just heard. He would have been an engaged father and husband when the time was right. I will miss the opportunity to see all of his dreams that he be realized, and I'm saddened that I won't be able to witness these life opportunities. Secondly, our family has suffered from this atrocity. Aaron always brought the fun to the house, whether it be entertaining the kids at younger siblings' birthday parties, recommending TV shows and movies to the family, jumping on the trampoline with siblings, or in countless other ways. He was the roommate and like the other pea in a pod with his older brother Luke, who's now 26. My daughter Lorelai, 21. Aaron was his confidant. He was the person that she could go to and talk to about any issues that she had. He was the best friend of his now 16-year-old sister Phoebe as well. He was the bringer of fun and video game buddy of my 13-year-old son Micah. Well, today would be his 13th birthday. We should be home celebrating that today. He was a friend and confidant to all his siblings. He taught me other ways of looking at situations and issues. He was my son and friend to all. I love him. Brandon was a family friend who had been involved with all of our family outings, it seemed, meals and activities for years. How can we go on trusting anyone fully after witnessing what someone that we had trusted so much brutally murder and eviscerate my son?
All right, we're going to hit the pause button. We want to bring this to you, all of this victim impact statement now by the victim's own father, who, remember, he has said that the defendant, now killer, because he pled guilty, was just like his own son. Stay tuned. We'll get you back into court on the other side. Now to Georgia and the sentencing hearing for admitted killer Brandon Risner. He is facing life in prison without parole after pleading guilty to killing his close friend Aaron Davis by stabbing him nearly 20 times. Let's go right back into court where we left off the victim impact statement from Aaron's father.
Personal impacts on me include so many sleepless nights and waking up with a rush of terror, anger, and confusion regarding why my son was murdered, and often losing sleep the rest of the night. Due to the mutilation of his body, I've not had the opportunity, until today, to see even pictures of my son, let alone identify his body. I had only heard somewhat vague descriptions of what was done to him. In some ways, this has made it worse, as I've had to picture it in my mind to come to some sort of closure. I will never fully understand what led to this, but I know that I can never recommend that Mr. Risner be allowed to be free anymore. At the time, I was a member of a bishopric, which is a lay ministry position in our congregation at church.
What was that?
I was a member of the bishopric. So a lay minister in our church, in the lay ministry. But decided I needed to give that up in order to spend more time with my family when we were in the pews at church, mostly with my kids and my wife having difficulty and needing someone there with them. At the time of the murders, I was working as a home care physical therapist and had a clientele that I worked with multiple times a week. I had to give up all that clientele and ultimately switch jobs as an immediate impact of what happened, just because I couldn't continue working at that time, planning for a funeral, planning for trying to figure out what was going on and trying to put my life back together. The psychological scars from betrayal from one who we treated like a son or brother is irreparable. Every time I hear my son Micah refer to murdering an opponent in a video game, I feel pain. I work with elderly people at an assisted living center now who are naturally conversational when I discuss and always ask me, how many children do you have? Instead of answering 5, which is correct, I usually have to answer 4 because I don't want to get into that with them. I don't need to burden them with what's going on in my life. But it's a challenge for me. I've been waiting for this day to try to begin healing from this, as it's still hard to fathom whether this is a real event and that he's not just away at college still. I've done what I can to try to keep myself as busy as possible, working, having a secondary job that I work on, trying to spend time with the family, being active at all times in order to not let my mind have to think about what happened. I do believe in both justice and mercy. I believe that justice can be best satisfied as Aaron will not be coming back. The best justice would be for the defendant never to be allowed out of custody again. I do hope that he can find mercy with God and seek help while in custody to be able to plead with God for his mercy at the appropriate time. Beyond the hideousness of the crime itself is the ability to hide those intentions, a total lack of remorse such that I would never be satisfied, no matter how cooperative he would be in prison, that he could ever be trusted again. I feel that it would be wrong to make any recommendation other than life in prison without the possibility of parole for someone capable of committing a crime like this. Tell his other friends that he's doing better than ever while simultaneously covering up this hideous act and lying to us about what happened, even to the point of trying to make us believe that our son had tried to take his own life. As a father and husband, I've tried to be the stoic and strong one, especially as this has caused so much distress for my wife, Sarah. I fear that I haven't done this as well as I've done enough as I try to understand this myself. I hope that no one has to go through what Aaron and our entire family has endured at the hands of Brandon Risner. Thank you. Sure.
Tell me about Aaron. What kind of personality did he have? What did he like to do?
As we talked about, I mentioned a few times, he loved movies and television, but he was really an intellectual at times. I was just looking at his a Christmas wish list that he had. Included books from Dostoevsky. It included books from his favorite philosophers that he liked to read. This is not someone that was out looking for, run-of-the-mill stuff. Those are the kind of things he did in his free time. He'd have 3 or 4 books that he'd be reading, completing those, and he'd like to discuss things on a very deep level. He was an amazing young man.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Still with us, I have my guest, Corey Pegues and Marie Pereira. Marie, let me start with you. I really liked how this judge asked the victim's questions. He said to the girlfriend, tell me, how did you meet the victim? And then you just heard to the father, tell me about his personality. What did he like to do? I love the compassion. But as is always true, to hear these victims have to read these statements, talk about a person who was murdered so young, what are your thoughts for the sentencing?
I think it's amazing that the judge is really humanizing the victim and asking the questions. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where the judge is doing that. I think it's important for the families to express the level of loss they experienced as a result of this murder. It seems so heinous, so senseless, that I have to make myself believe there must be something mentally wrong with this defendant. It's a good thing he decided to just take a plea to not put the family through this. And I like the fact that during this victim impact statement, they're also allowed to say, I don't think that he should get any type of possibility to see the light of day. And this is right. It's done right. It's not bringing the person back, but it's definitely honoring the life that was stolen from them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marie. And Corey, with you and all your great expertise, I have to focus on the facts of the case. He did plead guilty. However, what about the fact there's no known or articulative motive in this case, that it was almost 20 stab wounds, which to me says anger and passion. And what happened? They were allegedly best friends, and yet he killed Aaron Davis.
Yeah, well, I agree with Marie, but I take it one step further. 20 times is very personal. Remember, he was going to see his girlfriend that night. He was leaving to go see his girlfriend. I believe there might be a theory that they might have been undercover lovers. You don't know, because why? If they're best friends, you know, the girlfriend said he would have definitely been like the godfather of my kids, one of the, groomsmen in our wedding. They was that close. We saw the videos with them making movies. They went to church together and everything. But the only thing that I could see here is he's going to see his girlfriend, and he got so upset that he was getting ready to go see this girlfriend. What made him so upset to go see the girlfriend that he ended up killing him? Not only just killing him, he stabbed him 20 times, hit the body. That tells me there's something going on a lot deeper than he just got mad at him, or he owed him some money or something. 20 times is very, very personal.
There's a motive.
And listen, the cell phone is gone because he didn't want them to see what was on those text messages. What's on those text messages? We always talk about the electronic footprint tells the story. And that's why he got rid of that cell phone.
Yeah, and that girlfriend even said, not finding that cell phone took a piece of me away because we didn't get to see what it said.
Right.
All right, we do need to squeeze in a break. Coming up next, though, you don't want to miss it, because the victim's mother, she is going to be delivering her victim impact statement. Stay tuned.
Did a customs agent commit cold-blooded murder?
Marsha Thompson is accused of fatally shooting her husband as he's lying on a couch.
She's claiming self-defense, alleging that Terry Thompson repeatedly threatened to kill her.
So what really happened inside this home?
Now, a jury will decide the fate of this law enforcement officer.
And Court TV will bring it all to you.
The abused wife or murderer trial. Live coverage today, only on Court TV.
Free quote.
We will get you back inside court in just a moment. But first, an update on a story that we've been following for some time. Police in Corpus Christi, Texas now say that remains found last month are, quote, most likely those of Caleb Harris. His parents issued a statement saying the remains are their sons. Caleb's remains were recovered from a wastewater station, and investigators say there were no obvious signs of homicide, but the advanced state of decomposition made it impossible to make a positive ID or to find a cause of death. Of course, Court TV will continue to follow and update this case for you. Now let's turn back to the sentencing hearing for aspiring actor Brandon Risner, who pleaded guilty to killing his best friend Aaron Davis, 21-year-old. Getting back now to the sentencing hearing, the victim's mother is now giving her victim impact statement.
Aaron Davis is the second oldest of 5 children to my husband and I. Aaron was so loved and adored by his siblings. Aaron had an extraordinarily close bond with his siblings, who are named Luke, Lorelai, Phoebe, and Micah. I have never seen my kids get into a fight. They just loved each other so much. Luke and Aaron had such an amazing connection and shared a lot of same interest. For example, whenever I would be on a video phone with Luke and Aaron would come into the room, I became invisible because as soon as they would see each other, they would light up and start talking very fast and animated, changing from one subject to another with never a break in the conversation. They would laugh and giggle, and this happened every single time they talked. When Luke was on his 2-year church mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the rules at the time was he was only allowed to call home twice a year, once on Mother's Day and once at Christmas. We FaceTime him those times, and I barely got a word in because Aaron and Luke were overjoyed to talk to each other, and they were talking so fast and excited that I couldn't get a word in. My daughter Phoebe was 14 years old when Aaron was murdered. Aaron and Phoebe would call each other BFFs, best friends forever. Aaron would greet Phoebe by saying, "Hi, BFF." Aaron and Phoebe would hold hands and walk miles around our neighborhood, discussing movies, TV shows, music, philosophy, and religion. Aaron and his siblings were very affectionate, hugging, holding hands. Lorelai, who is currently living in Japan, serving an 18-month mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, shared her thoughts about Aaron and said, quote, "Aaron is someone I can fully be myself around and not hold anything back. Not hold back any part of my personality. He is someone I know I can always count on for advice and comfort. We have so much fun discussing movies, books, and video games. We love Jake the dog from Adventure Time, open door philosophy, which basically means always saying yes when you have the chance to try something new or learn a new skill. Because of this, we love to try new things together. Aaron has taught me to be adventurous, inquisitive, and open-minded," unquote. Micah was 11 years old when Aaron was murdered, and he counted on Aaron to be there to help him while growing up and beyond. Aaron would organize and plan Nerf gun battles with fun and different rules to play at Micah's birthday. All I had to do was provide the food, and Aaron organized all the games. It's Micah's birthday today, and he should be here celebrating with my son. He organized whenever Micah had friends over. He helped play with them. Micah just loved how Aaron would play with him. Shortly before Aaron was murdered, I overheard Aaron 4 different times saying to Micah, quote, "Mr. Micah, I picked out a game for us to play together," unquote. Micah has autism, and he doesn't have people. And Brandon took the person he had, the cooler older brother that would play with him. Brandon knew how much Aaron's siblings needed and loved him, but Brandon stabbed Aaron to death, made him suffer first with that knowledge that Aaron was so needed. Aaron was a very obedient, loving, and caring son. He listened and obeyed Randy and myself. Aaron brought so much joy to us as parents, and we was so looking forward to his future. When Brandon stabbed Aaron to death, he also stabbed Randy.
We are approaching the top of the hour. I have to say goodbye to Corey Pegues. Thank you so much for joining us. Marie Pereira is sticking around, and Michael Ayala joins me next as we hear more from the sentencing hearing of Brandon Risner. Stay with us. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcox.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice. A Florida jury is hearing more testimony this afternoon in the abused wife or murderer trial. Defendant and former customs officer Marsha Thompson was back on the stand this morning testifying in her own defense.
The state says she was fed up when she killed her husband Terry back in August of 2019, but Marsha claims she was suffering from battered spouse syndrome and that she shot Terry in self-defense. We will have more from Marsha Thompson's trial later today.
But right now, we are in Rome, Georgia, for the sentencing hearing of aspiring actor Brandon Risner. The 23-year-old is facing life in prison without parole after pleading guilty to killing his close friend, Aaron Davis, by stabbing him nearly 20 times. Let's go back into court now, where we left off, with victim impact statements. Right now, testifying or giving her statement is Aaron's mother, Sarah Davis.
Hearts out. We have been so devastated by the evil actions of Brandon. Aaron's future was brighter than the sun. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science with an emphasis in statistics from Brigham Young University, Idaho. He loved democracy, freedom, and was very involved in studying political issues before he voted. He made sure he always voted. On the day I believe Aaron was murdered, he had taken the GACE test in political science. He texted me after the test that he had passed and scored very high. This test was so he could become a high school government or law teacher. It was also so he could get a master's degree in teaching political science. He told Randy and I that eventually he wanted to get his PhD and become a political science professor. He also told us that becoming a lawyer was not off the table. his friend said, Aaron's main goal in life was to get married and have a family. Our hopes and dreams shattered when Aaron was murdered. Aaron earned the highest rank in Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scout Award. He really did emulate the Scout values of being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Aaron was a good, kind, and loving person who would have kept changing the world for the better. Aaron was a philosopher. He read 200-year-old philosophy books just for fun. Loved to analyze movies. He loved to read and analyze books. He played the trombone, piano, and sang. When Aaron would be walking by himself around the house or elsewhere, he would frequently sing to himself or hum and make music with his voice. I treasured sitting next to Aaron at church, singing the church hymns together. Every Sunday we were together. He sang with heart and believed the words he was singing. Aaron had a great love of learning and was constantly reading 5 different books at the same time on all different subjects. The day before Aaron died, Aaron came into my room to talk to me while I was lying in bed. We talked about different books we have read, and he told me all the books he was planning on reading next. I've been in so much pain knowing I'll never have a late night talk with him again, and all his future plans are buried with him. Aaron loved to play all different kinds of board games that required stratagem, and that's something he would do with all his siblings. They really liked to play board games together, and when my daughter Phoebe's birthday was soon after Aaron was murdered, and all she asked for were board games, but no one to play them with. Aaron loved to jump on the trampoline with friends and siblings. He was a good leader in a household of Nerf gun battles. He was a good listener and peacemaker. Aaron loved to be goofy, be funny, and laugh and make people laugh. One way he expressed this is by writing movie scripts and then casting his siblings and friends in the movie and then posting it on Luke's YouTube channel called The Bigger Fish. Of course, the movies were completely weird and silly. Also, Luke and Aaron decided to critique a very obscure show called The Ewok Adventures and post it on The Bigger Fish. It was just a way to be silly and express themselves. Oh, Aaron made everything so fun and had such an enthusiasm for life. He did marching band and theater in North Forsyth High School. He loved to hike and go on walks. He enjoyed being in nature. He played baseball, soccer, frisbee golf, and pickleball. He loved to dance and took 2 ballroom social dance classes at college. For the last 2 years of high school, he was a full-time student at the University of North Georgia. Aaron was a hard worker and worked to pay for college and his other expenses. The different jobs he had were he worked at a restaurant, Walmart, enzyme remediation, doing mold removal. He was a movie extra. He sold his plasma. He worked at a call center. He worked at a haunted house in Rexburg. He was a teacher's assistant at BYU, Idaho. He worked at Gabe Zeller Law Firm in Reidsville, North Carolina. And lastly, when he was murdered, he was employed at Zero Odor in Alpharetta. Aaron is a disciple of Jesus Christ. He graduated from 4 years of seminary. He's an ordained priest and elder in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Aaron was a missionary. I have precious memories of going to the temple together with Aaron to do endowment sessions. Aaron sent me a private message one time that said, quote, I happened to finish reading the Book of Mormon again today, and I think Moroni is my new favorite book in the Book of Mormon. It is so cool how the book ends by setting the foundation and rules for the church that I've gone to every Sunday, unquote. This is such an Aaron statement because he was always analyzing. Aaron posted a post on his Facebook page that reads, quote, the Book of Moroni in the Book of Mormon is amazing. I'd like to challenge y'all to read it, unquote. He also posted another time that reads, quote, hello, friends. I would just like to testify unto you that God has a plan for us. I would recommend you all read Doctrine and Covenants section 76 verses 50 to 70, unquote. Brandon stole Aaron's life by murdering him and broke our hearts and devastated our lives. I have cried every day for a year and a half. I've had a hard time sleeping since Aaron's murder, and when I do, I have nightmares of Aaron being stabbed to death. Some people in our household had a fear of Brandon coming to our house and stabbing them to get death. And when they hear noises at night, they think it's Brandon breaking in, coming to murder everybody. Every day I would have to tell myself that no matter how much I cried or begged God, Aaron is not coming back. My brain liked to go into denial. I've missed a lot of joyful occasions because I was too depressed to go because of Aaron's murder. I missed my daughter Lorelai's college graduation with a bachelor's degree from BYU, Hawaii, because I was too depressed about Aaron's murder and had to stay in bed. I believe Brandon carefully planned Aaron's murder. Brandon found a huge hole in the woods, and his evil mind started coming up with a plan. We have never known Aaron to drink alcohol. After Aaron was murdered, we learned that Brandon and Aaron were drinking the night Aaron was murdered. I talked to Luke and a close friend who both went to college and knew Aaron in high school if he had ever known Aaron to drink. They both told me no, Aaron never drank alcohol. Aaron was dead, so there was no need to cover for him. I think Brandon peer pressured Aaron into drinking for the first time that night, so his defenses were down. I talked to Brandon several times right after Aaron was murdered because I was looking for Aaron, and Brandon was very calculated in changing a story when I would catch him in a lie. One lie Brandon told me while my kids, Phoebe and Michael, were listening was, "I think Aaron killed himself." He was really depressed, and you have no idea about your son, he said. The day Brandon murdered Aaron, Brandon called his friend Silas. Brandon told Silas how happy he was. He said his life was going great. Brandon said, "I have a girlfriend, my life is great." Brandon was his normal self during that conversation, even though he had stabbed my son to death and mutilated his body and made Aaron suffer. This showed Brandon has no remorse and is happy about what he did. I've cooked and served Brandon thousands of dinners at my house over the years. And he's slept over at my house many, many times. He's seemed to spend more time at my house than his own. I've seen Aaron and Brandon interact. I was always home and they were always at my house, and I always witnessed and observed Aaron being so kind to Brandon, making Brandon lunch, talking to him nicely. When Brandon and Aaron drove out to Idaho, Aaron let Brandon sleep on the nice bed, Aaron on a little baby bed. Just Aaron was always kind to Brandon. And I was right there to witness it because Brandon and Aaron were always at my house. In October, before he spent a lot of nights at my house in October, and then Brandon murdered Aaron in November, and he was all the while planning to murder my son while I'm cooking for him, taking him out to eat, taking him to the fair. Brandon is the worst type of evil, where he chose to stab Aaron to death and cause such a tremendous loss and pain to those who treated him with love. Brandon deserves to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole.
All right, we do need to take a break. Let me just check in with you, Michael. Obviously, very hard to hear. She says this defendant who's now pled guilty, no remorse, happy the next day, evil actions that killed her son.
Yeah, again, with these types of things, in terms of determining sentence, you look at the aggravating, mitigating factors, and she's certainly outlining quite a few aggravating factors.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to hit the pause button when we come back. We're going to go back into court. And guess who we're going to hear from? Brandon's father. That's right. The convicted killer's father is going to speak. Stay tuned.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the murder of Madeline Soto and the case against her mother's boyfriend. Plus a deep dive into the Black Swan murder trial ahead of next week's live coverage.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
She killed my dad.
Or murder.
The Black Swan murder trial. Live coverage next week following jury selection on Court TV.
Back now to Georgia, where we are bringing you the sentencing hearing for admitted killer Brandon Risner.
The former aspiring actor is facing life in prison after pleading guilty last month to brutally stabbing his best friend, Aaron Davis, after a night out drinking. His motive remains a mystery. Let's get you back in now for victim impact statements. Continuing up now, it is Risner's father. This is the convicted murderer's father, Jeremy Risner.
Yes, sir.
And I've prepared a statement I'd like to
go ahead, yes,
to read and maybe do a little ad lib too, if that's okay.
Yeah, that is okay.
Okay. I realize that most people in this room and on those TVs are seeing a murderer. And they're seeing what they're going to see. What they don't see, what they'll never see, is the joy that he brought into our lives the day he was born. He's a kind, gentle person who never, ever showed a sign of violence in his life. He showed nothing but kindness. He was a part of the Davis's family. There was an open door, a revolving door. I took that boy to scout camp every week, every year. They were family. He loved the smile on those kids' faces when he would go over there, so we let him go over as much as he wanted. When he went on his mission, you could tell he was feeling more and more like he's looking at his life from the outside like he's not there. But we tried to get him out, offer him love and encouragement. He's the reason I choose the right. He's the reason I would pray at night, because he set an example for me. And he was always strong for me. When he went on his mission, he ended up getting counseling for the same reason: suicidal tendency, feeling detached, feeling like he's outside looking in. We knew something was wrong. We got help for him. He was home for a while, went back on his mission out in Utah, and it was the same thing. The mission president got him the help he needed. We knew he had Tourette's. We knew he had OCD. We knew there was something different. But again, he was filled with so much kindness and love. I'm going to read it like a letter, because that's what it is. I'm writing you as a deeply concerned parent regarding my son, Brandon Risner, who is currently before you because of the actions he's already taken responsibility for by pleading guilty. I now respectfully ask for your leniency as you consider his case for sentencing. Brandon has always been a kind, a friendly person, cherished by those who knew him and know him. From a young age, he demonstrated a love for music and aspired to become an actor. His passion for the arts has been a significant part of his life and identity. However, Brandon also faces significant mental health challenges. Although they do not excuse his actions, he does suffer from depression. To Tourette's, OCD. He's moderately autistic and is currently being treated for schizoaffective disorder. These conditions have profoundly impacted his life, especially over the past 2 years. Now make it 4. During this time, he experienced delusional thoughts and felt increasingly disconnected from reality. He began contemplating suicide, prompting us to bring him home from college to provide the support he desperately needed. Despite these struggles, Brandon has always sought to contribute positively to his community. He was an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and served a mission with dedication. He also completed a semester at Brigham Young University, Idaho, where he pursued his academic interests and also went further counseling and treatment for depression and suicidal tendencies. During his mission, Brandon sought help from a professional counselor referred by his mission president due to those suicidal thoughts and feelings of paranoia towards his companions. We did everything in our power to support him and provide the care he needed. Tragically, while he was back and living at home, that incident occurred that has brought us to this point. In November of 2022, Brandon's best friend since childhood, Aaron Davis, was staying at our home while we were out of town. For no discernible reason, Brandon took the life of Aaron Davis, a person who was truly like family to us. Likewise, Brandon was a loving part of the Davis family. This heartbreaking event occurred in our home, leaving both families and the community absolutely devastated. Your Honor, we firmly believe that Brandon's actions were not the result of malice, but rather the culmination of his mental health conditions. We're committed to ensuring that he receives the ongoing treatment and support he needs to manage his illnesses. We ask for your compassion and understanding in recognizing the profound impact his mental health had on his behavior. We earnestly hope that with appropriate treatment and care, he can one day prove himself able to reintegrate into society and lead a productive life. We humbly request that you consider a sentence that would be conducive to mental health treatment and eventual redemption. Our family is dedicated to supporting Brandon during his time in custody, and we're prepared to take all the necessary steps to ensure his continued rehabilitation while serving out his sentence. Thank you for taking this time to consider our request for leniency and the possibility of parole. We trust in your wisdom and fairness in making a decision that reflects both justice and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My best to you. Yes, Ms. Lee.
My name is Jenny Lee. I am Brandon's mom, and I'd like to start by saying how sorry I am for the Davis's loss. And I carry that grief with me every day. But I have to let you know about Brandon. I never imagined that I might one day have to stand here and ask for hope for the life of one of my children. I never thought that I would have to defend one of my children's characters because, I'm sorry. I never thought I would have to defend one of my children's characters because they have shown their character through the lives they live. But until these last couple of years, I always assumed that a person's character was defined by how they live their life. However, I have come to believe that determining someone's character is much more complicated than taking a snapshot of their life. A simple glance at their life does not show you the trials that they have faced or the obstacles that they have overcome. My youngest child, Brandon, has taught me this. As his mother, I cannot define him by his worst moment. I will not.
Here to discuss criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Marie Pereira. Marie, we were talking last hour about there's no apparent motive. Well, I think we've just heard and understand from the father the mental health issues that clearly underlie this, because he mentioned Tourette's, OCD, schizoaffective disorder, mild autism. All of these things, paranoia. I think you can have a perfect storm where it results in an action like committed in the death of his friend.
This is so tragic, and yes, I believe there are mitigators in this situation if they can come up with experts to prove what they're saying is true. Because all of this now is coming from the mouth of his parents, who are trying to get leniency for him. That would be a good reason for the judge to consider life in prison with the possibility of parole. Because there are mitigators if they can be proven with expert psychiatric, mental health, professional testimony. But it doesn't bring back the victim. This whole talk from his dad about reintegrating and mental health, yes, but reintegrating into society, that's a tough one for me, because at the end of the day, he did that. For whatever reason, mental health or not, he needs to stay where he is, get his mental health, and not come back into society, in my opinion.
I agree.
Maria, I have to ask you, I'm not sure there's going to be another witness. Let's just say that this is basically the testimony from the father. I don't know if the mother's going to add to what he had to talk about in terms of the mental health issues. If that's all the judge has to work with, is that going to be enough without it being backed up? Now, we don't know. There may be on the record, they may have put in some medical reports or doctor's reports.
Sure, good
point. We don't know that, but provided they don't have that and all he has to work with is what the father's telling him, do you think that's enough?
It's not enough, not backed up, not unless, like I said, it's backed up by professionals, because those are his parents. They didn't lose their son, so they can come up here and say all they want about mental illness, this and that. But the other family, they lost their son. He's never coming back. So in that sense, if that's all they have is the word of the parent, then the judge needs to really make a decision based on the facts of the case. He murdered this child. He took a plea, so we don't even know why he did it. And all of this mental health stuff is uncorroborated by facts from an independent medical person. And unless that happens, the judge needs to do the right thing and leave that murderer in jail for the rest of his life in prison without a possibility of parole.
Now, I will say I agree with you, Michael. I think the jail is going to be treating any mental health needs, and those records are likely before the judge, if there are any.
Yeah, I would imagine something's before the judge. And, you know, I would imagine with this kind of background. And it sounds like things took a turn a little later in life, right? And things started to take a little bit of turn. Can be very distressing for parents. But clearly, I agree with you, Marie. Can't take your eyes off the ball. This was a horrible, awful crime.
Agreed.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, more from Risner's mother. We'll see what she has to say. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott here with Michael Ayala, and we are bringing you the sentencing hearing for former aspiring actor Brandon Risner. He pleaded guilty to killing his best friend, Aaron Davis, stabbing Aaron some 20 times.
We've been listening to victim impact statements from people who loved Aaron. This is, of course, the defense's case. Well, now we're hearing from the defendant's mother. Let's go back in and hear the rest of her statement.
he is so much more than this case has shown him to be. And I thank you for allowing me to show you the character of this beautiful soul whom God sent me to raise. I had very few issues with Brandon's behavior as a young child. He was a good, honest, and kind child who was very concerned about making good choices. He was a goofy and fun-loving boy. However, we noticed that he began speaking later than his peers, and as he got a little older, his trouble with reading and the noises he made during class prompted us to seek the help of a psychologist. He was diagnosed with OCD and Tourette's syndrome. The Tourette's made it difficult for him to pay attention in class. His tics were very distracting for him, and it made it difficult to listen and to read. The OCD also made reading tedious and time-consuming because he would reread the entire sentence if he made a single error. The OCD also impacted his ability to pay attention due to the intrusive thoughts that plagued him. Despite these challenges, he was hardworking. He was a well-behaved student who earned good grades. He had support at school and at home. Throughout his teen years, his awkwardness became more noticeable. It made it more difficult for him to relate to and befriend many people. As difficult as it was for him to make friends, he kept them once he made a friend. I think it was because once someone got to know him, they realized how funny, imaginative, athletic, talented, and good-natured he was. His church gave him a place to belong and people who knew and loved him. He attended church seminary, which is a Bible study program, every school morning, and went to church almost every Sunday. His goal was to serve a mission when he turned 18, and he did his best to live accordingly. Missions are an opportunity to share the gospel and God's love. They also teach young adults independence and responsibility while challenging and strengthening their beliefs. Brandon strived to live his life in a way that would show that he was worthy to serve a mission. He had to remain chaste, be free of drug and alcohol use, refrain from using profanity, and carry himself with integrity. As awkward as Brandon could be, that awkwardness disappeared when he was with his family. He loved being an uncle, playing with his nieces and nephews. He was always eager to be with his family, whether he was pruning his grandmother's bushes, hiking with me, or getting into mischief with his brother. He loved nothing more than being surrounded by those he loved. Brandon loved music and taught himself how to play both the guitar and piano. He had a huge heart and showed this by volunteering with disabled children at his school. He even spent a summer visiting with elderly people at a nursing home near our home. He never got in trouble in high school. We had no complaints from teachers, and he continued to get good grades through graduation. He finally left on his mission to Brazil in February 2020. Unfortunately, he was only in Brazil for about a month when they closed the country because of COVID. During his short time in Brazil, he experienced some of his first panic or anxiety attacks. They were triggered by his feelings of not belonging and paranoia that the other people did not like him. On more than one occasion, He told me that he felt outside looking in at himself and others living their lives. After returning home for a few months, Brandon was sent back on a mission to Utah. He expressed concerns about returning to the mission field because he was nervous and worried that people wouldn't like or accept him, and that the panic attacks he experienced while in Brazil would return. I urged him to try again because this has been his goal for years, and I didn't want him to regret not seeing it through. During his time in Utah, the panic and anxiety attacks not only returned but worsened. He again expressed concern to me that he felt like an outsider. He also revealed that he was worried that he might hurt someone. I did not overthink his worries at the time because the therapist he was seeing then and when he was younger had discussed his intrusive thoughts and explained that they did not indicate that he would act on them. I also took his wariness as somewhat normal teen behavior, as feelings of inadequacy and anger. I remember telling him not to worry about such things as hurting someone. I knew him, and he could never hurt another person. Nonetheless, his mission president's wife was a counselor and even had a son with Tourette's syndrome. He began counseling Brandon, and after a couple of months, Brandon still couldn't cope, and he decided that he was ready to come home. Brandon returned to mine and his stepdad's home for a couple months, and it seemed to us both that he was depressed and in a slump. He stayed in his room singing and playing guitar all day. Brandon lost his motivation to do anything, which was understandable. Most of his friends were on their missions or at college, and he was back where he had started. After talking to Jeremy, Brandon's dad, we decided that Brandon needed a change of pace and scenery, so we went to live with Jeremy and Rachel in Rome, Georgia. Several months later, Brandon started school at BYU, Idaho, where he roomed with Aaron and Luke Davis. But once again, the panic attacks and paranoia increased, and he soon found himself back at Jeremy and Rachel's house.
All right, we need to squeeze in a break. When we come back, we're going to have more from his own mother describing for the court all the different things she knows about her son. Stay tuned.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the murder of Madeline Soto and the case against her mother's boyfriend. Plus a deep dive into the Black Swan murder trial ahead of next week's live coverage.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
She killed my dad. Or murder.
The Black Swan murder trial. Live coverage next week following jury selection on Court TV.
Thanks to Dose.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Michael Ayala here with Judge Ashley Wilcott, and we're listening to victim impact statements at the sentencing of Brandon Risner.
Risner pleaded guilty to stabbing his friend Aaron Davis to death. He faces a sentence of life without parole. More now from Brandon's mother. She's describing the changes that she observed in her son.
Aaron Davis would help quell the feelings of not belonging and the fear that people didn't like him. Brandon and Aaron had been best friends since the 8th grade. Brandon and Aaron spent so much time together that Brandon felt like part of the Davis family and loved them all. I don't know what happened that tragic night. I still have a hard time believing it, that Brandon could do this. I talk to him several times a week, and all I see is the same boy I know and love. The only way that I can reconcile this horrific act with my son is by acknowledging that Brandon suffers from severe mental breaks. That knowledge is the only thing that allows me to recognize that Brandon is where he needs to be for now. His actions caused devastating sorrow for the Davis family, and he will pay the price for those actions. As a mother, I can't help but feel like I missed a lot of clues as to what was going on with Brandon mentally. It was difficult for his family or friends to take his struggles as seriously as we should have, because he hid the severity of them so bravely. He did not want anyone to think of him as different or damaged. And his paranoia made him more apt to hide the parts of himself that he was worried would cause him to be rejected, even by me. It may have been avoidable with proper medication, additional mental evaluations, therapy, or discovering the misdiagnosis. However, I know that Brandon was not himself. He was not himself. He was not acting. Sorry. With a sound mind that night. So I ask you today to consider what defines our character. Does our one worst act, despite a good life, define all that we are? Can one horrific mistake erase a lifetime of love and kindness? I cannot believe it does. And I hope you can see that too. My child is kind and a loving human being who suffers from severe mental illness that were not recognized or dealt with in time to save two very good people's lives. Aaron Davis's and my son's. I ask that the time that he serves will be in a facility that can teach him, treat him, and help him overcome his mental issues. I ask that you consider granting him hope for a future outside of prison walls someday, so that he may one day return to the family that loves him and cares for him. I ask for your understanding, and most of all, I ask for hope. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Okay, here to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Marie Peretta. Marie, I got to say, you know, as I heard her talk about the fact that he did mention he was capable of hurting someone, she kind of told him not to worry about it. She missed some cues. All I got to think about were the Crumleys in Michigan. Now, this is Georgia. But again, I want to get your thoughts on those comments by Mom.
I appreciate the fact that she's advocating for her son, and while there are mitigators there, I don't think it's enough for the judge to consider releasing him into our community. I think the judge should go with life in prison without a possibility of parole. They missed it, but look what happened. Someone died. And I think you just can't walk back from that to say, please put him in a facility where he'll get treatment and then reintegrate him back into society. I think it's easy for the family members of the defendant to feel that way, but the victim, they're never going to get their son back. And I'm sorry, but as far as this case, I have to do the pencil. They better leave that boy in prison for the rest of his life, because he's unpredictable, not safe to be out here. No matter how much treatment he gets, I would not feel comfortable with having someone who could do something like that back into society. Unsafe for him and society.
And I just have to chime in and say, especially because the parents both said they were getting him help. They knew that he had issues. They knew he was not himself. They were getting him help. And in spite of that, this happened. But just quickly, Marie, talk about if it is life without the with the possibility of parole, it doesn't mean he's just going to get out in 5 years. I mean, the parole board is pretty strict about everything they consider before ever agreeing. Does that give you any reassurance if the judge says with parole?
Yes, the parole board will put him through it. A lot of investigation to find out where he's at mentally, who's going to look after him when he gets out. Is it safe? Is he safe to be, in society? Is he a danger to himself? All of it is going to be a factor in deciding to release him. But at the end of the day, he does not deserve to be released, because some things you just should not be able to walk back from. He murdered that boy, and he should pay for it and not see the light of day, and that's just what it is.
And Michael, he murdered this boy, but he also admitted he was afraid he was going to kill someone, and you just don't know if the mental health treatment is going to solve that.
And again, I disagree a little bit with Marie in that treatment can help these kind of situations. And I think given the right treatment, the right, approach to the problem, 50, 60 years, this could be a guy you could send out and say, hey, go with God.
We just don't know yet. All right. Thank you, Marie Pereira, for joining us this hour.
All right, folks, stick around. Much, much more from out there. And where are we in that case?
Georgia.
In Georgia. We'll take you back to court in just a minute. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. We begin this evening with the sentencing hearing for the defendant, Brandon Risner, in the Scare Actor murder trial in Georgia. Risner pleaded guilty last month to stabbing his best friend, Aaron Davis, to death back in November of 2022.
The court has been listening to impact statements, including emotional ones from the victim's parents. Well, right now, the defense is presenting its argument before the judge actually sentences the defendant. So let's get back in court.
First of all, my respect and condolences to the Davis family and friends. I've been practicing law a long time, 37 years. I don't recall a more heart-wrenching day. Tragedy that happened, that my client, Brandon, caused. Horrible tragedy that he took responsibility for. And the horrible tragedy that ultimately resulted in him pleading guilty. I've had multiple conversations with my client, as you can imagine, Your Honor, over the last 2.5 years about what happened, about the best course of action. And to his credit, he understood that what he did was irrevocable and wrong, and that he wanted to take responsibility for it. I naturally, after reviewing the file and the state not offering any prior problems or convictions and aggravation, was curious as to if someone has never had a problem with the law, why all of a sudden this? So it naturally led me to believe that there were mental problems, severe mental problems, which resulted in not one but two psychological evaluations, one that we privately employed and the other done by the state. Both psychological evaluations concluded that legally there was no sustainable insanity defense, but both evaluators said notwithstanding that, there were multiple psychological problems that Brandon was suffering from that still played a very large part that night. A lot of emotion has been heard here today, but I would ask the court to remember that this is a sentencing hearing. Courts of law over the years have had theories of why we sentence, why we punish, and it usually comes down to retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. All four worthy of consideration in assigning the punishment to any criminal defendant. I believe the first three, retribution, incapacitation, and deterrence, are already met by the minimum sentence this court can hand down today, and that's 30 years, period. Whether the court decides to give them the possibility of parole, not guarantee parole, but the possibility, which is what we're asking for, or without parole, minimum is there's going to be 30 years done. I believe that all three of those are met with that number. So the number that's left is rehabilitation, and whether or not Brandon is a candidate for rehabilitation. I would submit that he is, notwithstanding the case in aggravation that the state presented, which is heart-wrenching. It's noteworthy that he did do good things during his life, going in the mission field. He was a good son, brother, uncle, friend. He wanted to belong. And unfortunately, there were a lot of misdiagnoses that ultimately Dr. Gleiser and Dr. Ellison came up with, and specifically, and just as a background, Your Honor, Dr. Gleiser spent in excess of 30 hours reviewing all materials in this case. She's a highly respected forensic psychologist, but the hours spent were with interviews with Brandon, review of the state's evidence, medical records, review of competency evaluation written by Dr. Laura Ellison, who did that for the state, and interviews with over 10 family members. It's a 40-page report, thoroughly exhaustive and comprehensive. The report concludes with Dr. Gleiser's diagnoses of ASD, the first time we've heard of this, which is autism spectrum disorder. In addition, unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorder. Cannabis use disorder, which, because Brandon's been in custody, is in remission. Obviously, he doesn't have access to anything cannabis related, as well as alcohol use disorder, again, in remission because he doesn't have access to it. His mother testified from the letter that she wrote that for years they knew he had OCD and Tourette's, but nothing as serious as what Dr. Gleiser opined in her report. There are three, I believe, noteworthy comments that Dr. Gleiser makes in her report. First one is on page 37. And it says, it reads, although those with ASD are infrequently violent, research suggests that when it does occur, it is most often the result of misreading events or people as threatening, a common theme in Mr. Risner's life.
That's on page 37. Next, ASD symptoms can, and in many circumstances, be so impairing that those with this condition cannot live independently and requires significant support. In Mr. Risner's case, he mostly lived with his parents, and during those brief times he lived away from home, he struggled quite significantly. And I think the most telling comment that Dr. Gleiser makes is, and it's actually her opinion, Brandon does not meet, as stated earlier, Brandon does not meet the criteria for the insanity defense. However, it is apparent his symptoms of ASD and unspecified schizophrenic and other psychotic disorders affected him tremendously the night of the offenses and were likely the primary contributing factors to Mr. Davis' untimely death. What I take away from that, Judge, is this. Maybe if Brandon had been diagnosed with ASD and these other impairments earlier, he would have gotten the necessary treatment, necessary therapy, but nobody knew about it. He's not insane, but she can't help but conclude that but for the symptoms of the ASD and the other impairments, we wouldn't be standing here today. If you couple that with the fact that, once again, he doesn't have any kind of record, I don't even know if he has even a speeding ticket. I think it suggests that we're talking about somebody that is a candidate for rehabilitation. And in order to do that, he'll have to serve a minimum of 30 years. But if the court agrees and he is a candidate for rehabilitation, then we're asking that the court sentence him to life with possibility of parole. And once again, it's a possibility, it's no guarantee. He's going to have to prove himself. He's going to have to dig down and get a lot of therapy under his belt as he moves forward. So 30 years, I don't think I need to tell anybody, it's not a short period of time. So a lot can happen between now and then. And what these reports suggest is that this may be something entirely fixable. The tragedy that happened that night is not fixable. And I can't begin to feel the way the Davis family feels right now. But we are here, Your Honor, for a sort of business, and that is the sentencing. Every one of their victim impact statements was very, very difficult to hear. But I'm advocating on behalf of Brandon. I'm not saying somehow that he get released early outside of the 30 years. I'm not suggesting anything that's not completely legal. I'm making an argument for mercy. I'm making an argument in equity. I'm making an argument for a kid that maybe if he had a little bit better therapy or a little bit better doctor once upon a time, this would have never have happened. Thank you.
As part of the evaluation that the defense provided both to the court and the state, there were narratives of Brandon's different accounts of what happened that night. His version of things that went on. And what we knew, of course, was horrific. but there were some things that only he could tell us as the only surviving person who was there, and those were equally disturbing as what we already knew from the police investigation. First, this was premeditated. This was not a random act of violence or a random occurrence. This is something that the defendant had been thinking about since at least early fall. He had taken edibles and witnessed a prophecy where he felt that God was telling him that he had to either kill his best friend or have sex with his stepmother, and so he thought there would be less self-pleasure in killing Aaron. He also had another prophecy, which is another term that the defendant uses for his visions, where he felt that that Aaron was going to lose it and become just as deranged as the defendant. The defendant thought Aaron might kill Phoebe or Micah, Aaron's younger siblings. So the day of, I knew, I had a hunch I would have to do it because of that prophecy. And so these are the defendant's words, that on the day of, he knew this was premeditated, that he was going to kill Aaron. He also had another one where he thought that as some type of reward for killing Aaron, that he would then have an opportunity to see Lorelai, Aaron's younger sister, because she would have to come back for the funeral, and he might have a chance at that point to start a relationship with her because he'd had a crush on her. These things came about at times that the defendant was smoking marijuana and or drinking alcohol, but at different parts in his account and in different parts of the evaluation report submitted, the defendant recognizes that smoking marijuana and drinking made him have urges to kill, but he continued participating in those behaviors anyway. He last reported smoking marijuana a week before the murder, but he acknowledged that he was purposefully drinking that night in order to help prepare him in his plan to kill Aaron. So Aaron called the defendant that day to say that he was coming into town. And when the defendant got that call, he thought it was a sign of his destiny because his parents were out of town, and so Aaron would be alone with him at the house. His homicidal urges returned, and he decided he would channel them into the best possible outcome by killing Aaron. Aaron arrived around 4 o'clock at the defendant's residence. We know he had left around 2:40 based on the text messages. And when Aaron got to the defendant's residence, the defendant described that Aaron came in without knocking and that Aaron did not greet him with a hug, which was unusual because they did typically greet each other with hugs. The defendant shortly after had to leave to work at Rome Athletic Club, which is where he was working at the time. And while he was there working his shift, he described that he thought carefully about killing Aaron and decided to go through with it. So the decision was made by the defendant. He'd been thinking about it before that day, but he decided to do it after Aaron had arrived in town and when the defendant was working at his gym. He also, on the way home from the gym, picked up a bottle of red wine, which he intended for both he and Aaron to drink. He also talked about having dark fantasies and obsessions with movies like American Psycho. He wanted to prove that he wasn't a loser because he felt like if you've everyone fooled, that means you're not a loser. And he, at different points, expresses that he felt he wouldn't be a loser if he didn't kill someone, that he desired to be charismatic, that he desired to be, quote, the top dog psychopath. At a different point in one of his evaluations, he distinguishes himself from Ted Bundy, which again kind of shows that he sort of has this preoccupation with serial killers. He's obsessed with Christian Bale's character in American Psycho. He knows enough about Ted Bundy to distinguish himself from Ted Bundy and make a comment that showed he recognized what Ted Bundy had done. He was familiar with hydrochloric acid. He had watched Dahmer on Netflix. We knew that from the police cell.
Really some disturbing details being laid out by the prosecutor. We do need to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to hear more from the prosecutor continuing her argument for life without parole for the defendant, Brandon Risner.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the murder of Madeline Soto and the case against her mother's boyfriend. Plus a deep dive into the Black Swan murder trial ahead of next week's live coverage.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
She could hear the bat hitting her father.
Michael was under the influence of Courtney.
Michael Moore is not the person who killed my father.
Accomplice to Murder with Vanny Politan, Sunday night, 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Before we head back to court, let's bring in criminal defense attorney Jack Rice. Thank you for joining us here, Jack. Listen, you know, the defense had me when they were saying we're arguing for mercy and equity and all the mental health problems, and I was right there with them until I started hearing from the state. And two things that stood out to me. Number one, he felt like he would be a loser if he didn't kill someone, and then his obsession with serial killers. And I'm starting to get a picture of my wondering, could he ever be rehabilitated?
Oh, see, Your Honor, that's really the struggle. I think about this issue a lot because I see it a lot in courtrooms all of the time. This concept of competency on one end where they're literally incapable of being prosecuted versus mental health, or the lack of mental health, or medical diagnoses, or sometimes undiagnosed issues. And what you get is this spectrum along that line. But there is a bright line in the sense that you're either competent or incompetent because you're also balancing societal harm. So you're always looking at how do you deal with that. But there's one last piece of this that's interesting to me, and that's this question of how do you handle somebody if you put them in prison with no chance of actually ever getting out? Because remember, when you're thinking about corrections jails, they're trying to always figure out what's the lever to make people act a certain way. If you act a certain way, you may have a chance of getting out. If they have no chance at all, what's the leverage that you use to get them to act a certain way? And so jails think about that too, especially when they're trying to handle large numbers of people in very close confines.
Yeah.
Now I got to say, Jack, that certainly is a concern. It's a societal concern, no doubt. But that's not a concern of the judge in a case like this. That's not something, when you start talking about aggravating factors, mitigating factors, that's not one of the things that the judge is going to consider in this case.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Michael. And that's one of the limitations that we have here, too. And yet, I understand the judge's response, meaning Judge Ashley's response to this idea. You listen to some of his motivations and who he is. This judge has to look at what's in front of them and say, look at the loss to this family. Look at the loss to society. Look at what it was that he actually did. And so what you get is this very difficult balance. And I think this may even highlight one issue that a lot of people forget, and that's the brutality of what it is to be a judge, to sit on the bench and to realize the horror and the victims that have been in place here. It's not just the young man who was killed. It's not just their families. Frankly, one victim, if you will, is actually the mother of Brandon, because she's playing a role, and this judge has to absorb all of that and then say, okay, now I'm going to go home and try to live my normal life. I mean, this really highlights how difficult the criminal justice system is for all of us who were involved.
And you also mentioned, Michael, the brutality of what he did to his victim. It wasn't just, I'm going to stab him and that's it. He brutalized the body.
Yeah, he brutalized it, and according to testimony from the medical examiner, the way things played out, it seemed as though the victim was alive. The heart was still beating when some of these were inflicted upon him. He tried to dismember him. Apparently, he might have been still alive, and that there was no resistance, no sign of resistance. So he might have did this before the kid even knew what was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So just some ugliness there. All right, let's get back into that courtroom in Georgia, where Scarehouse actor and convicted killer Brandon Risner is waiting to learn his fate in his sentencing hearing.
Of his phone, and so again, these things he has these preoccupation with these things, and this also kind of puts into light the earlier searches for No Country from Old Men. That is after he's killed Aaron, in between his different searches to try to cover up his crime, is he's also still watching movies again on this subject matter. Ultimately, his dark fantasy becomes realized, and that's when he kills Aaron. And these are the defendant's thoughts when asked about the moments leading up to and when he is killing Aaron. I don't remember a single thought. I knew what I had to do. I was a man with a plan. I got up on the roof and stalked my prey. I became a carnal animal like in a dream. I saw that he was laying on the bed in there. I hid behind the pillow for a second to make sure that he didn't see. And the defendant reported that he started feeling emotion for the first time as he was killing Aaron. But then he later says, the only emotion that I felt was surprise that I could have done it, or that I could have changed my reality so drastically by doing one move. These are his words about how he felt as he was killing his best friend. He also talked about how he felt when he ran from police after they had discovered the bloody sheets in his home. I was feeling pretty good then. I knew that was supposed to happen, me running from the police. I also loved playing tag, and it was fun. I'd had dreams about being pursued by the police for something like this. I had a dream in the springtime where I stabbed Aaron in the neck and he wouldn't die, so I thought the dream came true. Again, this is some sort of dark fantasy of his, but it is also exciting for him, and it is enjoyable. He's likening this to a child game of playing tag, and this is where he's running from the police after he has killed his best friend. We also learned some new details about what actually happened based on his own description of the murder. So he did take Aaron to Cosmic Dog, where he ordered those drinks. And again, this is after he'd already decided to kill Aaron. They went to Giggity's, and then the defendant drove both he and Aaron home, where they got around 11 p.m. They sang karaoke together, and then they drank the wine that the defendant had bought on his way home from work. Again, this is premeditated. This is part of his plan. The defendant acknowledged that by the time they drank the wine, he was drunk. He played guitar for Aaron, who complimented him, and the defendant recalled feeling very flattered because Aaron had given him 2 compliments that night. And then around midnight, Aaron went upstairs to go to bed, and the defendant could hear that Aaron was upstairs throwing up. So in his own words, he's going to then take that opportunity to pick out the murder weapon from the kitchen. He selects a knife that is sharp, short, and skinny. It's the same knife that he later admits that he cut himself with, so that cut on his hand never came from Aaron. The defendant cut himself. After he gets the murder weapon, he gets on the roof of the home, crawls outside the guest window where Aaron is sleeping, and he describes himself as stalking his prey at that point, as a man with a plan, as becoming a carnal animal. When he saw that Aaron was asleep, he crawls back into the window that he'd come out of. He goes down the stairs, retrieves the knife he's already picked out to kill Aaron with, goes up the stairs, stands behind the pillar, makes sure that Aaron is asleep, and then he begins stabbing Aaron in the neck. Aaron was asleep. He was vulnerable. He never saw this coming. He was not a threat in any way to the defendant, and the defendant acknowledges that repeatedly in that report, that he wasn't threatened by Aaron at that time, that Aaron had not been aggressive towards him at all, that in fact Aaron had been nice to him with those compliments, and he had felt flattered by Aaron.
All right, it's interesting because the defense had argued that part of ASD, sometimes they can respond to threats by acting this way,
right.
But she's saying there was no threat here.
He was asleep.
Right. He was asleep. All right. Quick programming note, folks, as we gear up for the start of the Black Swan murder trial in Florida. 2 important guests with an inside look into that case will be joining closing arguments with Vinnie Politan tonight. Ashley Benefield is charged in the murder of her husband, Doug. She claims she shot him in self-defense.
Tonight, Doug Benefield's cousin and his attorney from the couple's custody battle will join Vinnie. That's right here on Court TV tonight at 9 p.m.
All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, the prosecutor wraps up her argument in the Scare Actor murder case going on in Georgia. We'll take you back to court on the other side. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
And welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. The sentencing hearing of Brandon Risner continues in Georgia. He faces life in prison without parole for the brutal stabbing of his best friend Aaron Davis back in November of 2022.
The prosecutor is still arguing for that maximum sentence before the judge. Let's go back into court where we left off.
The defendant's description of the murder is that it was horrible because it was apparent to him that Aaron was in pain. He said suddenly it didn't feel like God's will, it felt like pure evil. Because Aaron woke up and it was horrible, he was screaming a lot, and it felt like forever. This was gruesome, and Aaron suffered. If you compare what the defendant describes here with those earlier song lyrics that I presented, it does indeed sound like those are lyrics written based upon Aaron's death. Because those lyrics were, he screamed till he choked on his own tongue and blood. His scream became a gargle as he swallowed his tongue. He also gave a description of what he did after. That he dragged Aaron's body into the shower in order to drain his blood, that he began removing parts of Aaron's body in order to, quote, lighten the load, that he put some of Aaron's remains in a suitcase for transport, and he then went and put Aaron's body in the trunk of Aaron's car. This is all Thursday evening / early morning on Friday because it's after midnight. And he started cleaning the bedroom but didn't have enough cleaning supplies, so he goes to sleep with plans to wake up early the next morning to continue. But he does throw the knife onto the lawn. Friday morning, he retrieves the knife from the lawn where he had previously tossed it. He begins cleaning the bedroom. We know he searched about if there's duct tape at Walmart. He does go to Walmart by 6 p.m. that evening where he purchases the duct tape. And we know that the duct tape was used to wrap Aaron's body. So when he's at Walmart at 6 o'clock, Aaron's body is still in a suitcase in Aaron's own car at the defendant's residence. The defendant took a Volvo belonging to his parents to get to Walmart. He then looked up and found a secluded location, but he wanted to wait until nightfall to bury Aaron's body, so he waited until that. And then after night fell, he began scattering evidence in different random dumpsters around Rome. He went to the wooded area off of Tunland Drive in order to bury Aaron where he wouldn't be found. And then he took Aaron's car to Heritage Park. At Heritage Park, he tossed the knife and some of Aaron's body parts into the river, including the missing piece of small intestine. He then pushed Aaron's car into the ditch that we saw pictures of earlier, but that was a deviation from his original plan. He had put the bricks in the backpack in the car with the intention of using those to wedge down the gas pedal so that the car would go further in, potentially even into the river, but it had been physically exhausting on him to bury Aaron's body, and so he was tired at that point, so he just put the car into neutral and let it roll into that ditch where it was later found. Saturday morning, he begins his campaign of lies and cover-up, where he starts telling multiple people that Aaron had left in the middle of the night, and he let his parents know that there were stains from blood, vomit, and red wine spills, telling the story that a glass of red wine had been dropped and the glass had cut, one of them causing blood. Some of the people he contacts, of course, we know Charlie Girl already, but he also contacts his stepmother, kind of pushing that story similar to the text message we saw, or excuse me, the reminder to send a text that we saw from his post-murder to-do list. But he also starts messaging some of his friends the same thing, that Aaron had left in the middle of the night, or that Aaron was missing, or that he was going to try to join into the search for Aaron. He took purposeful, goal-oriented actions which show that he appreciated the wrongfulness of what he had done. For starters, he decided to commit the offense when his parents were out of town so that he would be alone with Aaron in the house. He drank to reduce his inhibition, and he got Aaron to drink as well. He also took steps to conceal Aaron's body and clean the crime scene, and he went to get duct tape to better facilitate the transport of Aaron's body. He also attempted to submerge Aaron's car in the water. He knew that he needed to wait until nightfall to hide and bury Aaron's body because it would limit his chances of being seen. He began telling several people he didn't know where Aaron was. We also know that he was calling Aaron's phone several times after he knew Aaron was already dead. These were all calculated steps by him that show he knew exactly what he had done was wrong, and he was taking careful steps in order to avoid detection and thus avoid any sort of responsibility for his actions. He also joined in on the search for Aaron in Heritage Park, and he reports acting distressed because he thought it was expected of him. And at another time in the report, he says he thought it would make him look innocent if he was there and was upset because his best friend was missing. He ran from police when it was clear he was about to be caught. I remember that was fun for him. That was like a game of tag. That was exciting. And he felt like that was, something that was always meant for him to have happen. And so when he ran from the house, he went along the railroad tracks to Rome Athletic Club, which is where he had worked at the time. In the running, he actually lost his cell phone, so he did not have his cell phone. He got to Rome Athletic Club where he took a shower. When his parents came into town, they thought to look for him at Rome Athletic Club, and so they went to Rome Athletic Club. If you'll leave it on...
Where is Rome Athletic Club?
I think it's near Shorter, but I do think it backs up to railroad tracks. I believe they lead directly to it. And he went there. His father and stepmother found him there by the time they got into town. He told his father what he had done, and then...
So the thought is he ran from East Rome to Rome Athletic Club.
Yes, sir.
So he had to cross the river at some point.
He went along the railroad tracks.
Over the river?
I don't know the specifics of that. What he said was that he followed the railroad tracks all the way to Rome Athletic Club.
Okay.
Jeremy Risner and his stepmother find the defendant there at Rome Athletic Club. He tells Jeremy what he has done. Then at that point, they go in the car and they drive to Tumlin Drive, which is where Brandon has said he buried Aaron's body. And his stepmother recalled, and again, this is in that report, that on the way to Tumlin Drive, Brandon was singing along to the radio as if nothing was wrong. When they get there, his father gets out. At some point, his father believes that is what has happened, and then tells Brandon that they're going to need for the defendant to turn himself in. Up until that point, the defendant had thought that his father might help him run, and so that was another thing that he kind of did to avoid detection. But when his father suggested that he turn himself in, the defendant did. So again, these are purposeful, goal-oriented actions that show he not only knew this was wrong, but he took calculated steps to try to avoid detection. He gives multiple...
We need to step away for just a moment, but when we come back, the judge issues his sentence. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. We want to get you back to the sentencing hearing in the Scare Actor murder trial in Georgia. The judge is now ready to hand down his sentence.
First, I want to acknowledge all the family and friends that are present in court to support not only Aaron Davis, but also the defendant, Brandon Risner. Both of these young men have been loved throughout their lives. And I know all of you are experiencing tremendous pain, including the Risner family. But the pain of Aaron's family far exceeds that. To have a young son brutally murdered is unfathomable. I hope that your fond and loving memories of Aaron and that your faith will provide you some comfort as your life continues. Having said that, I have considered all of the facts and circumstances of this case and counsel's arguments. And I have come to the conclusion that justice requires that Mr. Risner be sentenced on count 1 to imprisonment for life without parole. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's based upon the premeditation, the manner of death, and the efforts to cover up all of the acts. On count 2, felony murder, that will be vacated by operation of law. Count 3, to which Mr. Risner also pled guilty, will be vacated by operation of law. Count 4, the aggravated assault, will be merged into count 1, as will count 5, aggravated assault, and count 6, aggravated battery. Count 7, concealing the death of another, the sentence will be 10 years. Count 8, abandonment of a dead body, there will be a sentence of 3 years. Count 9, theft by taking, motor vehicle with a value more than $5,000, the sentence will be 10 years. Count 10, removal of body parts, be a sentence of 12 months. Count 11, tampering with evidence, be a sentence of 10 years. And count 12, obstruction, that's a misdemeanor, the sentence will be 12 months. So the total sentence is life imprisonment without parole. Did you want to add something, Ms. Mayo?
Your Honor, count 11 is a misdemeanor. You had said 10 years.
Count 11, yes, tampering with evidence?
Yes, sir.
Well, you thought I looked that up? Okay. That will be a sentence of 12 months as opposed to 10 years. The sentence speaks for itself. God bless everybody in the courtroom.
Oh, Your Honor, would you include a condition of no contact of any kind?
All right, so there you heard it. The judge sentenced Brandon Risner to life in prison without parole. He goes through a number of charges, adding years for things like aggravated assault, aggravated battery, tampering with vehicle, tampering with evidence. But those don't really matter. They kind of merge in. He's in jail for the rest of his life. Let's bring back in our guest joining us to discuss, criminal defense attorney Jack Rice. Jack, the judge laid it out, the premeditation. The prosecutor made a pretty good case about that. The manner of death, which we know was heinous, and also the cover-up afterwards were really what informed his decision.
Yeah, I think it's smart that the judge did is he described his thought processes, how this happened, why this happened, this behavior before, during, and after. It's all about justification. It's about explaining how this works. Because remember, the judge, and I've said this so many times in court, that when this case is over, this judge has a docket that's going to just continue and continue and continue. And that's the same with the prosecutors, same with the defense attorney, and then all those bailiffs too. But this family, they're going to carry this moment for the rest of their lives. And so it's critically important that this judge behave in such a manner and describe what it all means, because this is what justice looks like. And they're going to carry that concept. And it's also a societal question, which is what the judge is doing. He's not representing the people. this family. He's representing essentially, or at least ruling for the people, and that's important too.
Right, and for our system. What do you think of the fact, Jack, that with 2 of the victim impact statements that we brought to our viewers, the judge actually asked them questions and said, for instance, to the girlfriend of the victim, how did you all meet? And then to the father, oh, tell me about his personality. Tell me what he liked to do. Have you seen that very often?
I don't see that very often, and yet I do understand it. I have a little bit more of a problem when it comes to the question of burden when we see juries get to ask questions. But if we think about a sentencing where basically the judge is trying to understand everything that is before them so they can come to a ruling as to what they're doing, I think there's something to that, because there may be a question that judge has to balance, has to look at, to be able to say, this little piece may push me over the top, push me to the left, push me to the right. All of those things are important, and I think it's actually useful when a judge gets to do that sometimes.
Sure.
Quickly, Jack, there's a couple of things I thought might work in the defendant's favor. The fact that most of what they learned about this crime came from him, and it sounded like he was embellishing, that maybe he was, glorifying himself in some way. And also, to get into the mindset to do it, he needed some sort of intoxicants, drinking or marijuana. I thought those 2 things, while it was argued by the state, could have been helpful for the defense.
Yeah, Michael, you're right. I mean, isn't that the interesting aspect of this sometimes? Sometimes a piece of evidence actually cuts both directions, and you can realize how both sides can use it. And I think, as we've discussed many times, this is the example of where you lean into evidence. Sometimes it's bad evidence to be able to describe maybe that competency question or that limited capacity question. Even if it's something terrible, there is a balance and a reason for doing so.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much, Jack, as always, for being with us today.